Another cornerstone is laid this day. Simple though the ceremony, it is deeply significant. It marks a long stride in the rapid advance of the university during the last decade. It commemorates the munificence of a fellow citizen, itself a token of the esteem felt by the community we strive earnestly to serve. The occasion is joyful, yet solemn. We are the recipient of a great gift, involving correspondingly great responsibility. Like the servant who received 10 talents, we also shall be required to exercise wise stewardship. And while today our thought naturally centers upon the grand material structure soon to rise, upon these steel-ribbed granite walls resting so firmly in their immovable foundations, the idea of function and future use inevitably comes to mind. Like the university, conservator and disseminator of truth, the library is universal in scope. Upon endless ranges of shelves are to be gathered, by no hand, the sources of all knowledge, of all arts, all sciences, all philosophies, all humanities, inexhaustible as fathomless oceans. Not content with supplying amplest material for research, the library will counsel, comfort, stimulate, and inspire. As long as the university remains unfettered by tradition, untrammeled by political or theological opinion, untainted by personal ambitions, so long will this library endure, not merely as a sturdy edifice of steel and stone, but as a temple of truth, wherein the torch ever burns undimmed, and the altar fire goeth not out.
What fascinates me most about Roll's address, considering especially that it was delivered a century ago, are his thoughts about the relationship between tradition and the library's future. Roll understood even then that the library would have to be, as he says, unfettered by tradition in order to stay true to the vision of being foremost among the agencies that seek to educate. I think the insight still resonates today. The library has come a great distance since early generations of UC Berkeley students spent long hours in Roll's Temple of Truth, quietly communing with the printed text. Today, you're as likely to find students leading energetic discussions with peers in group study rooms, coming and going in the library's own classrooms where they learn to navigate an amazingly complex information landscape, or crowding the Free Speech Movement Cafe to fortify themselves, chat with classmates and faculty, and just do their work in a more relaxed atmosphere. And of course, you also find them filling library computer labs until the late hours. And they're not just typing and text messaging, but in many cases actually using the library's virtual collections, which aren't bound by the spatial constraints of our print materials. So you could say that the library as place is evolving. The changing nature of library collections, which now include content like datasets and formats like digital video, make us rethink the requirements of the spaces in which our students are using the collections. And while there's still an enduring need for traditional spaces of reverent silence and solitary reflection, the library now also has to be able to support the increasingly social nature of learning. 100 years since the cornerstone of Doe was laid, the library today strives to be the university's preeminent intellectual and creative commons, providing the diversity of collections, of services, and of spaces to ensure that learning is not just quietly accommodated, but catalyzed in myriad ways.
I am Michael Wee, a fourth-year Berkeley undergraduate majoring in music. In 2007, I won the Library Prize for Undergraduate Research for a research paper on the Baroque viola and improvisational style. My mentor, David Maroney, once compared library research to the experience of going through a candy store with all the lights turned off. In the beginning, you are stumbling around, your feet shuffle across the floor, you don't know what kind of candy is there or if it's even worth finding, but eventually you develop your own sense of intellectual smell. You begin to rely on that and less on your sense of sight. I don't think he could have explained it any better. Last year, I spent countless hours at the Jean Grey Hargrove Music Library, one of the finest in the world, housing unique manuscripts that I drew upon for research I could not have conducted anywhere else. The recently built library has a large collection of works, both written and composed, that were essential to my thesis.
A few years ago, I was working on translation of the classic Japanese haiku poets. One of them is a poet named Basho, great poet and originator of the haiku form. And the poem of his I was working on, in the translation I finally got to, goes like this. I think it's one of the great, all-time great nature poems, and it goes, "As for the hibiscus by the roadside, my horse ate it." The problem for me with the poem was the name of that flower. And because of this library, I was able to go to the East Asian Library and find 3 or 4 different Japanese texts to see how the name of the flower had been transcribed in Japanese. And then I was able to go to the Botany Library and track down the plant, the Asian plant, and even add for a footnote for American readers what version of Sierran hibiscus might put them in mind of the Japanese flower. One kind of amazement of this place is that you can find almost anything. I love walking down the hill to work in the morning from Euclid Avenue and seeing the library in the middle of the campus, where it ought to be. It's an enormous gift. I hope that donors to the library and the citizens of the state who pay for it understand what an enormous treasure it is.